Welcome to Accountants Law Pod, where accounting professionals and law firms converge. Hosted by Linda Artisani, Sarah Prevost, and Stephen Libhart.
Hello, everyone. This is the Accountants Law Pod. This is a fairly atypical setup here. We have our hosts, and normally they would be the ones to kick things off. But of course, in typical J. McAllister fashion, here I am as a guest beginning our festivities of the day. I'd like to kick it off by first introducing our hosts to give some comments before we have this discussion, which we will talk about the AI age that we live in and how it is affecting legal practices today. My hosts, kick it off, please.
I adore you. You are so good.
I don't know. I think
McAllister comes on our stuff and introduces himself.
Yeah, I'm out of here. You did a good job, Jay.
All right, we're AI Jay. How do we know he's not real Jay? And
Exactly.
Maybe AI Jay.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I'm expecting Jay to come from the side somewhere. Like,
Well, for our viewers, they'll have to wait until the end of the episode to figure out whether.
there you go. Said like a true marketer.
So true. Well, you're so magnanimous. Like, you got to introduce yourself, right? That's just the way it goes. I love it.
You know, in certain cases, this can be an effective intro. So we'll see how this is. But hey, on the spot, I like the way this is done. You know, this was not planned. So we decided that probably 10 seconds before.
Yeah, have fun with it. As you can see, I couldn't do a poker face on that one. This was cracking me up. Well, welcome back.
Yeah, welcome back. It's funny, Sarah. Last time we were together, Tiara literally had to bring the hook in and tell us, okay, time's up. We need to end it. And we kept going and going and going.
As you can see, Steve, we missed you on that last one, but you can see why we just
absolutely.
Really
I've been looking forward. Yeah.
Well, we were
all right. Okay, who paid you guys to say these things?
Oh, I know. I don't know.
No.
Let's see.
Actually, we got a lot of great feedback on the one that you
somebody in the blue category. No, I'm kidding. I gotta say, prior to us even starting this, it was funny. We were having a conversation about a wonderful colleague of ours, and we were joking around that he's AI because we just don't know how he does it.
Yeah, I hold strong to that belief. I'll let you know if that changes or updates because I am someone who is, I have a background in science, so I do believe in the scientific method and being disproven if compelling evidence presents itself. But right now, I must say the evidence is all pointing towards the fact that they
Wow.
Oh, that's true. Well, we are talking about AI today. What did we want to dive in? There's so much that has changed.
Don't be afraid of it. Use it. Oh my God, it's wonderful.
That's Steve.
Yeah.
But since Linda and I spoke with Jay, it has rapidly changed.
Oh my gosh, it's going crazy. And I send you guys in our backdoor channel articles that I find, and they're like, it's now doing this and it's now doing that. And it's just like every day there's something new. Mm-hmm. Well, what about, can I ask this right off the bat, Jay? What about and the name's escaping me, but the new Chinese company? What do you know about this?
Oh, don't get me started. So one thing I must say, it's very difficult nowadays. So I do quite a bit of speaking engagements. I had a talk that actually Sarah and Linda were able to, that's how we connected originally after I talked at CleoCon. Yeah. And I was talking about AI. And, I talked about the framework that I created. I think we went over the framework the last time I was here on the last episode, the Leverage AI framework that helps legal professionals to identify what tasks would be suitable to be outsourced to AI. Well, the interesting thing about it is that we are sort of in a new frontier where part of my preparation when I speak is that I will enter into this phase where I just binge watch content, read articles voraciously for about a month leading up to my talk, just to make sure I'm up to date on all the latest developments. And one thing I have to say about AI is this task has become so difficult. I've spoken. I just spoke for the Institute of Continuing Legal Education 2 weeks ago, and I spoke about a case in which maybe you've heard of it in Minnesota, which a Stanford ethicist was called in order to weigh in on this particular matter, which dealt with using deepfakes in political elections. He was supporting this existing legislation and saying that it applies to AI. And the interesting thing about it is, like, within a week of me talking about this, of me researching this and then being able to present this, the information had already changed materially as far as how what his new involvement was. Originally, the court wanted nothing to do with him once he had submitted this information. This ethicist, it turns out, he cited cases that were fabricated, which is sort of usually a career-ending move as an AI ethicist, and you now are caught using, I think it was ChatGPT, without confirming the output. But
why?
You're right.
It wants to please you. That's why.
So, but he was actually brought back in to weigh in on the discussion. So, AI is changing so rapidly. It's very difficult to keep up to date. And, from a day-to-day standpoint, I mean, OpenAI just released a bunch of new features. We can talk about that specifically and how it pertains to legal context. But, I think, so you mentioned, Steve, DeepSeek. So DeepSeek is that Guangzhou, China is where DeepSeek comes out of. And a private company, essentially the whole premise behind why this is making headlines is that this is the first time that we've seen a private company create a large language model.
Is it private?
There's some air quotes there. Create a large language model that is on par with, and in some cases exceeds the capabilities of our best in breed tools today, like Anthropic's Claude, ChatGPT, and Gemini. So, and the interesting thing about it, the reason why it's creating all these ripples is that it's done so at a fraction of the budget that it costs to research and develop these other platforms. So, for example, with DeepSeek, they're now on version R1 is the new version that's their new advanced reasoning model that's causing all of these stories to be put out. But the cost to build that, to research and develop and bring the tool to market, was $5.6 million.
That's all?
5.6 million, right? That's all. Now, it's sort of a hotly contested topic because there have been many experts that have weighed in on the conversation, and they estimate the cost to be closer to $2 billion. But you figure, $5.6 million plus or minus $2 billion, just a small.
So what do you believe when something like this comes out? It's like,
well, the thing is, it doesn't matter because either way, even at $2 billion, that's significantly less than the cost of bringing something like ChatGPT to the marketplace. Mm-hmm. Like we have the best minds in the world getting together for years and years to develop these tools, and then here comes this private company. We can talk about that aspect as well, out of China, who then creates this tool that rivals the capabilities of these platforms.
I think they copied some of what's already existing, because I mean, the fact that they did it that way, and I know it uses less energy, which is another big bonus of DeepSeek, but and I know it looks at the data in a different way, a way that I guess there was one way that Chat's doing it, and then there's another way that DeepSeek's doing it, which is able to do things faster, better, even though they tested it and it didn't do so well on the testing that I saw.
Oh,
so that's fascinating. It's all fascinating, but it's like, which one do you use? And I just test them. Like I like Perplexity. That's one of my favorite ones, but it depends on what I'm doing. So there's different ones for different things. Mm-hmm. I could imagine for law firms, it's the same thing, right? They're going to use different. If you're going to use it for research, though, shouldn't you be using it in a product that does research for legal that's going to cite? I want to see the actual cases I don't want made up cases. I need to see the actual if I'm going to use it in court.
Right. Yeah. And, that gets into the conversation around the utility. And, there are various use cases for AI tools that do not leverage RAG or retrieval augmented generation, essentially showing you their work, pointing you to the primary sources that it's using to derive its output from. From the DeepSeek standpoint, since we were talking about that, they've actually said that they've used a process called distillation in order to train their model. Now, distillation, what it essentially is feeding AI-generated content into the model in order to sort of create a synthetic data set. Oh. So because, ChatGPT had such a large data set, because Google, who actually has one of the largest data sets available because they have all the search information that we've output, because they have these access to these large data sets, they can create an AI model that has much more variance in the information that's being used to train it. DeepSeek did not necessarily have that, and it's primarily targeted actually at the Western market. So what they did is use the technology called distillation, which OpenAI is actively pursuing litigation against DeepSeek, saying that they used
Wow.
in a way that's not intended, which is that distillation method. They don't allow you to use their outputs in order to train their own model. So
So
whether that was the case or not is still, the jury's still out on that. But either way, it's impressive what they've been able to do in such a short time span and so cheaply.
Mhm.
I was
The
going to say
cost,
that's inexpensive, and also it's AI to AI essentially.
It is not using as much because I guess AI takes a lot of energy to produce, and this is a lot less, whatever the way they did it. And I read about it, and I'm like, oh, I had to reread it to kind of grasp what it was trying to tell you in the articles. But
so
it's fascinating.
so there's sort of, it's like who wins in this scenario. So
Yeah.
not only did they develop the platform for a cheaper cost, much cheaper. I mean, we're talking about,
Yeah.
pennies on the dollar, but also the usage of the platform is much cheaper. So this is for both the end consumers where the platform is free,
Mhm.
but then even for developers who are using it to tap into the API, the costs are significantly reduced from tools like ChatGPT or Gemini. You're talking like a tenth of the cost in order to, like, usually the way they measure this is in hundreds of thousands of tokens. That's how they measure the output. So when you query their
Oh,
model and ask it to deliver information to your tool, they
uh-huh.
bill you based on that. And DeepSeek is at such a low threshold that that's really why this tool started making headlines, is because people, these companies in these hedge funds in the US who have made these huge bets on AI companies and put plenty of their portfolio into those companies,
Yeah.
they're seeing a major threat of DeepSeek entering the market because they're doing it so cheaply. Now it's going to likely force those other companies to, play the catch-up
Play
game.
that.
Now it's
Yeah.
race to the bottom.
Well,
Yeah.
Jay, we just saw the politics of TikTok and China and all of that go on. And now here's DeepSeek. And how do we trust it? How do we know that they're just not gathering all of our information to use against us? I mean, like you said, this comes on so fast,
Mm-hmm.
so fast. And it's like, how do you embrace it? How do you learn it? How do you trust it?
Well, I think too, Steve, to add, I feel like what Linda brought up was a very valid point of if you're an attorney
Right,
using
right.
tools like this, where those tools are vetted, and like Jay had brought up that
Exactly.
they show you, they cite you the relative, space. But to me, I start to wonder, it sounds so synthetic, AI to AI. It's like, how does my AI bot said this to your AI bot, and like next you've got
Well,
this.
so with
Like, what is it?
with
Yeah.
that said, let's use LexisNexis as an example. Is DeepSeek saying, okay, I vetted this through LexisNexis, and then you've got to go to LexisNexis to look it up to prove that you're getting the right information to file your case? I mean, where does it, where's the peace of mind with this?
So yeah, so Lexis, from my understanding, they don't use DeepSeek, and many American companies are not switching their model, even though it's substantially cheaper. DeepSeek
Yeah.
has not generated the track record that these other vendors have. But
Okay.
there's actually sort of three abstraction layers you have to look at when it comes to confidentiality with AI tools.
Okay.
They're sort of the deep tech lens. Now, deep tech, these are the companies like OpenAI, like DeepSeek, like Google, Gemini. They're the one creating the large language models. So so that's sort of the base layer. So what does their vendor agreements look like? What does their confidentiality clause look like? What does it say that's in there? Now, there's this whole separate argument about, okay, it might say X, but do they do Y? And that's where you sort of have to take a leap of faith and look at the company's portfolio, and then also look at the what is the motive for that company? Like, what are they trying to build? And I'll explain what I mean by that in a little bit. The second abstraction layer is what cloud provider is hosting this information. So in many cases, like, for example, OpenAI, they don't run their own servers. They don't have their own hardware that run, Linda, where you mentioned, the power that it takes to run these platforms. They don't have their own hardware. So they actually use Microsoft, and Microsoft has huge data centers all over the world with GPUs inside of them, which are essentially the computing units that perform the calculations and deliver your output. So then you have to look at, okay, so there's OpenAI as one layer, and then they're hosting their information on Microsoft servers. So then what does Microsoft say they're going to do with the data?
Yeah.
And then you have the final level, which is what we call the wrapper. Now, the wrapper is, you can think of the large language model as the engine. That's like from a car analogy, since I'm a gearhead, as you can see behind me,
Mhm.
Corvettes everywhere. So the engine is like, okay, what engine is running your car? You can have any body style put on top of an engine, but the engine is the core technology there. But the wrapper is like, okay, do you have an F-150, or is it a Ford Taurus, or is it a Mustang? Like, what body are you putting around that engine? And that's the tools like Spellbook. That's the tools like Lexus AI. The end users tools that they're interfacing with. So you really have to understand those three factors at play for each tool that you're using to determine how you're going to safeguard your client's information. Now, when it comes to DeepSeek, because of the fact that, like, the air quotes we had referenced earlier, it is theorized, and this is all speculation, but it is theorized that the Chinese government likely had some involvement in at least the financial aspect of subsidizing this platform. It's very improbable that a private company be able to amass the resources, the talent, to build something like this, like DeepSeek. So because it can be speculated that the Chinese government had involvement with this platform, obviously we have a sort of a rocky relation with the Chinese government and privacy. That's why you're seeing, the TikTok ban, or companies like DJI being accused of sending information back to China about its US users. This is sort of a rocky scenario now. So if that were the case, that they subsidize the platform, then it is possible that information could be, gathered from the tool and sent back to the government.
Yeah.
It is also possible. I was on a webinar the other day with some really bright minds, who are on the forefront of this. They brought up an interesting use case that it is also possible that right now, that the way the tool works, since folks have, the whole concept behind DeepSeek is that it's open source, which is another big component there, meaning that we can see it's not a black box like ChatGPT or Gemini. We can actually see the code that powers DeepSeek.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, we can see what's going on behind the scenes. This is huge when it comes to AI models, because typically, it's like you input your prompt and then out comes your response, and you don't know what happened. You don't know where the data went. With DeepSeek, we can actually read each line of code. They publish it, available for everyday. Okay, maybe not like normal people, but very coders and programmers.
Yeah, I'm in.
Go in there. Yeah, not. We're not going to be
paper and your coffee and read DeepSeek's code.
So why do you suppose they did that?
So they want to create this environment. So open source, the way it works is typically that's where you see the most innovation happen. When you have something that's open source, you democratize that technology. You give power to the people to be able to create, innovate, and enhance the tool. So now you sort of crowdsource your development. Instead of it being focused on one company who has to make all of the developments and improvements to the platform, the community as a whole can do so. Now, and this is a big win for consumers, because typically those additional minds that are now able to tap into it, they can create some really unique things that one company on its own could not create. So, the way this works is that, when you have a tool like this that's out there in the marketplace and it's open source, now you start to wonder, that's right. I want to bring the point up that I heard on this webinar that I was on the other day. So the point was that we're wondering if, since users can see the code that's running, and we can see that right now in its current state, it doesn't appear that there's anything malicious in the code base or anything that would insinuate that information is being extracted and sent to the Chinese government. However, it's possible that the play could be that there is some latent code which will, at a certain time, 2 years from down the line, who knows what it might be, then start sending information once we've already gained this tool's trust and we've already sort of
trust. Yeah,
people aren't really following it as closely as far as the confidentiality component.
Kind of like, it's been there, so I don't need to mind it anymore.
Yeah. When's the last time you looked at Microsoft's privacy policy? Do you use your Outlook email without, or do you check to see their terms and conditions?
I should read the Google one. No, I haven't.
Yeah.
You don't even get a choice. You just say, okay, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have to sign it.
Yeah.
So, so that becomes an interesting angle. It's like, so my take right now is that I think people should, despite all of these potential security concerns that might be there, I think people should gain familiarity with using the platform, because it just adds to your diversity for how these tools function. The way DeepSeek is set up now, it's sort of like ChatGPT in its early days, where like you don't get all the complex canvas capabilities and the projects. It's
Yeah.
very simple, like just question and answer.
Yeah.
But the really cool thing that I like about it, one thing that it does much better than ChatGPT, and this alludes to the open source nature of it, is it actually shows you the reasoning model. So if I ask it to compare data between vendor A and vendor B, because I'm looking to make a decision for my company, you will see, and I tell you to rank them based on, here's my criteria, rank these companies. You will see, it'll say, okay, I'm analyzing their expertise in X area. Okay, I found this. Oh, but you're looking for competitive analysis. Maybe I should look into this instead. And you'll see this line by line as it reasons its way through your problem. So you can actually, from an attorney perspective, it's interesting because that's one of the main issues that lawyers have. They're skeptical about the reasoning behind how it derived its answer, but you can actually see the basis for how it created its logical arguments. And then underneath that is where your output will be.
That's impressive.
Wow.
So, the only caveat there I should say is that my take is that it is not a tool that you should use and enter client confidential information into. Ideally, you really shouldn't enter it into any of the platforms. There are some exceptions out there, especially if you're using the paid versions of ChatGPT. Again, this all comes down to trust and whether do you trust OpenAI? Do you trust Microsoft? I tend to trust them, that they'll do what they say in their privacy agreements, because of the fact that their whole business model is sort of centered around the fact that they're looking to create these solutions that people use over time, and the trust that they've built, they don't want to erode. So I tend to believe them that when they say they're not going to use my data to backtrain the model, I tend to believe that they'll do so, because if they did, that would cause some disastrous harm to their company and ultimately would lower their user base.
Yeah. That's a lot of data or a lot of information around what, like, to be able to see the data, to see the information, how it reasons it out. Currently, you don't have, you can see reference, like Linda and I use one product on you, and it shows you reference codes of where it's pulled some of that data if you ask it some questions, or how would you look at this. But I'm thinking of like, you're like you said at the very beginning, you're going into court, you're using these things as references, and you haven't looked further. Why aren't you using trusted resources that are built in and products that not every product has it? I understand that, but the ones that do, that are within the industry, I'm surprised at this profession, because you're right. Why are you writing yourself off right then and there? Like, goodbye.
It's like what's happening is that the output is so convincing that it lulls people.
It lulls people. Yeah.
You're in a hurry
like,
and you didn't have
that
time.
seems intuitive enough to be true.
Yeah.
Like, I could tell. What if I told you that everything I just said about DeepSeek was incorrect? But like, I said it confidently enough that
you made us believe it, right? Yeah.
that it
exactly.
resonated, right? So,
Yeah, it wants to please you, like Linda said. Well, it didn't want to please Steve, though, Linda.
I think with AI too, don't you think that it's going to grow a whole new industry of lawsuits and things that attorneys can do to
sure.
part of this? Because artists, and then they copy, and there's so much that you can see that's going to develop into a different type of law practice to do with AI. I mean, you can see the right law with this stuff.
I mean, so I have a colleague of mine who's a voice actor, and there was just recently an event in her industry where a voice actor's sort of style and tone, and I guess you could say their likeness, was captured by an AI tool. And then that tool created these, I think it was like for store jingles or something like that, or some store announcements or something.
Mm-hmm.
And they were used in order to train that model to then produce this stuff without her being involved. So now it's like, well, I want a piece of that, because this is clearly, it's using my likeness, and they're saying, well, no, it was inspired by.
Yeah.
So, it's definitely one of those.
So it's going to change the language around trademark and copyright and inspired by. I mean, as it is now, what do you type something, it says, it gives you caveats to use in your writing style if you choose to use that, if you don't rewrite it.
Think about that. That's been around, like with Grammarly, all that stuff's been around for longer
time.
You don't ever think of that as AI, but a lot of that That's stuff that we've been working with for a while. It's been there.
Well, so, you've heard the stories before about how artists sue each other over their songs sound alike. I wonder if AI could, like, if you could go in there and say, write a song for me write a tune that's never been done before.
Well,
and then make your millions,
I wonder if that would fly in the Kendrick Lamar and Drake thing. Because, he's writing his own stuff on one side. I don't know about the other.
You know what I'm going to be doing all afternoon.
Calling up Kendrick Lamar, I think, right?
Yeah.
You got him on speed dial, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Hey, I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because one of my colleagues and you all, Linda and Sarah, you might know him, but Damian Reel, he's an attorney and also a legal technologist. He's an IP attorney specifically, and he actually he's also a musician, which sort of factors in this story as well. So a man of many talents, clearly.
Yeah.
Hardest working man in showbiz. And what he did is and he's got a TED Talk. We should probably share it in the link, but he has a TED Talk where he had this idea where he was tired of artists fighting over copyright infringement, saying that, hey, you took my idea, you took my song, my melodies. So what he did is he actually wrote an algorithm that would determine all the melodies that could exist under a certain length, and then he published those into the public domain, so that he would own all of those songs technically, so that he could sort of start a precedent and say, like, okay, all the slots have been taken. I'm not going to sue over this. So now we need to start really deal with the real question, which is that, like, because so many songs have been made over time, is it possible that I've never heard your song, but we just happen to land on the same melody choice because it's just something that popped in my head, and there's only a finite amount of available melodies. So that's his whole concept, which is like, it's more about the lyrics and the music and the tone, and less about the physical melodies, because there is a finite amount of those that exist.
Okay, so I have a question for you, because I posted this. I was a little bit fascinated by it. So I posted this over the weekend, and it was about a song that it's very popular, but he took the music, the beat, one of the music tones in his song from an Australian, like where you walk across the street and it makes this noise. So I'm like, well, who is the creator of making the noise? And how does that work? Because it's in
when
his
you walk
song.
across the street
In Australia, there's a noise that's made on the sidewalk when it's a crosswalk, and it lets you walk across.
Oh, no kidding.
And it does this melody, which it hit this artist, and he's like, I like this. So it got into the song. And
wow.
Tira could probably link. She probably saw, because she sees my Instagram. So it got almost 2,000 views from just my reposting, just for fun. I was just having fun. I was like,
I thought
wow,
Tira was you on Instagram.
No, it was me. And anyways, I was
guy.
like, who made that tone for the sidewalk crossing to cross the street that this guy now has in his song, which makes me, that's where my brain goes. And I think what Steve is going to is what point does this, because it keeps going down the rabbit hole of where authenticity comes from, or melody, like you're saying. How does this, because it's like that in legal. It's how do you validate the information you've received to present in a court case? How do you know where the reference? I mean, you'd have to go back to your regular research, right? You'd have to go through your regular means of research to ensure that those cases line up with what you're going to reference, I imagine. I mean,
yeah, at least, it's like these sites are there for a reason. That's how opposing counsel's figuring out that you're full of it, is that they're looking at your case sites and they're saying, I can't find these. So before you send those out to the to the tribunal, why don't you actually take a moment to verify you're about to present as true and accurate to your understanding? So yeah. I thought you were originally talking about what was it, Ice Baby, because that was a direct Queen. That was a direct Queen ripoff.
That was a direct Queen ripoff. Yeah, that was. This one is interesting. I'm sure, Tira, I could get you the link too, but it was very fascinating to me. But also, my brain was like, well, who made that tune? Like, who made that crosswalk sound, right? Because people make things. I mean,
I've
and
seen this.
Some poor engineer who wasn't even like looking to create
Yeah,
things
I know
right. Now he's like,
he
wow.
made a music melody that's in a famous song
There's an
that Jimmy
entertainer
Kimmel now
that
talks about.
there's an entertainer that does, he takes a song and it just rolls into the next song and the next song. It's all songs, it's one beat and it just goes through and every song has that
Yeah.
same beat. And it's like, wow. But you hear it, they sound differently and you hear it independently. But when somebody puts it all together in a string, it's like, wow,
It's a
that's the
melody.
same song. Yeah, the
Yeah.
same basic song, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, but even then, it's like, aren't we all sort of informed and inspired by our collective society anyway? So like if I hear a song and it sort of inspires me to think down a certain path, like I think it's really difficult to try to say like it's an unrealistic it's an unrealistic goal to say that everything should be uniquely inspired and sort of siloed in its own, like everything art inspires art. And I think the greatest artists, they will say like even they've taken inspiration from X, Y, or Z. I mean, you talk
Good
about
point. Good point.
film directors, they'll say
Yeah.
like I'm a big M. Night Shyamalan fan, and he'll talk about how, various pieces that he's seen that sort of create these concepts in his head, and he uses those and pulls them together and synthesizes it. So now because there's multiple pieces of information,
Yeah.
from multiple people that's in one place, that's you're creating originality by combining these unlike
By
elements in
combining
a
them.
way.
Yeah.
And that's really all AI is doing anyway. It's taking information that already exists,
Yeah.
and it's finding new ways to interconnect, or it's finding new relationships between ideas and concepts that likely would not be connected.
So in the legal profession, when you're looking at this as a firm and how to work with these tools, because you hear obviously still the big scary thing about I'm going to lose my job or these jobs are going to go away, or so when you're in that space and you're looking from a consulting side and you're looking at their workflow and you're looking at improvement, what do you see as what do you feel like is the most tangible piece, or what is the piece that most attorneys are like, oh my gosh, I could actually do that and that could be serviced by, like, I don't mean to downplay this, but people love to have those robot tools on their sites. To me, sometimes it makes sense depending on the type of tool you need, but it doesn't make sense for certain. I mean, I guess it just depends on the tool. And I'm curious what through your lens, through your journey, what you have found most successful that has worked kind of like on the quick, or maybe as more of a fascinating, like, wow, I could actually do that. And that'd be easier.
But I certainly believe that law firms should not implement AI just for the sake of implementing AI, because
Perfect.
then it becomes a novelty.
Yeah.
And then it
Right.
becomes something that's left on the shelf.
So true.
So you have to actually be looking to solve a constraint in the business model. It forces you to put on the mind of a business owner and focus on the business of law for a second, rather than focusing on being a practitioner.
Yeah.
Where are those high impact areas that the firm could leverage AI in order to create efficiency around, and then targeting those? So like a big one, like, many firms, Clio had a statistic at ClioCon that they released in their legal trends report, which is that it was something like over 70% of law firms are using AI in their
Wow.
legal. But from my knowledge, so this statistic, when it was originally said, it did not really jive. It didn't sit well with me, because I'm like, 70%. Like,
I know. Yeah, that.
so I have many clients all over the U.S. and although anecdotal, we're talking about a client base of 50 or so firms. While anecdotal, you would think that would be a large enough sample size to at least see somewhere near that. I'm seeing somewhere near like 10 to 20%.
Interesting.
The level of interest and the appetite my clients have. So I started to wonder, so what could be, do I think they lied about their data? Not necessarily. It would seem to be probably the core of Clio's focus is not necessarily the AI tools. It's being a competent case management system. So there's not like a huge incentive there. So like, what could be going on here? When I started thinking about it further and talking to my clients, what I realized is that, one, the methodology. I talked to Joshua Lennon, he's their lawyer in residence, and the methodology, that the questions that they asked was around, specifically, are you using AI in your day-to-day? There wasn't necessarily a follow-up about what types of tasks are you using AI for, at least to my understanding.
Yeah.
So then the question I started asking my clients is, what type of tasks are you using AI for? And what
Yeah.
I found in my clients is that most of these tasks are legal adjacent tasks, or tasks that are not necessarily even related to the law firm at all. So
Mm-hmm.
technically, these lawyers are using AI, but they're
Mm-hmm.
not using it for legal production.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. And a lot of that comes from the fact that you see these stories like the lawyers from New York or the ones from Minnesota, the AI ethicists that I told you about. You see these pitfalls of negligent misuse of AI.
Yeah.
Lawyers they're trained to spot risks. So and spot issues. So that when they see
Yeah.
these type of things, it tends to make them take pause.
Well,
But
and is one type of law to practice using it, but another type is not. You know, the type of law that they practice. Maybe just for sake of conversation, maybe an immigration firm would hardly use AI, but
Oh.
corporate transactional attorney probably would. You know, I wonder. You know, in your 50 clients, what's the mix and how are they using it? You know.
Or
great
does,
question. So
yeah, that's curious. I'm curious about
a
that.
lot
I
of
had
this
a thought.
AI use was precipitated by there's usually a catalyst. In capitalist markets, they always drive towards efficiency. So
Yeah.
nothing is done just for the sake of doing it. That's why you're seeing now, is the first time in history, that private companies are entering into the space race, like SpaceX, like Blue
Mm-hmm.
Origin. Why? Is because there's a business incentive there now. Private companies weren't going to space. We didn't send, private companies didn't send Neil Armstrong to the moon in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
Government did that because that's the type of projects government take on, where there is no ROI. But from a business case, there has to be an ROI there. You have to be able to say, I was watching a Neil deGrasse Tyson podcast, and he was saying that, right now Elon Musk is saying, our next frontier is we got to go to Mars. He doesn't think that's going to happen. He's like, from a business standpoint, you go to your investors and your shareholders and you say, okay, we want to go to Mars. And they say, okay, great. Why? He's like, well, because it's the next frontier for humanity. Okay, great. Is it safe? No, likely people will die. Okay, well, what's the ROI? There is none, negative. And it's like, that's a 5-minute meeting. That's like, we're not, we're not doing it. So when it comes to the AI component, you have to have that driving economic force. We saw that first probably about 3 to 4 years ago in the insurance defense sector, because insurance defense is unique in the fact that the insurance carriers have tremendous amounts of data. As we all know, insurance companies, they collect information so that they can properly price their premiums and things like that. But also on the legal side, they want to understand how long legal tasks take so that they can make sure that they're getting the best deal. And then they
Yeah.
put that downward pressure on the firms
Yeah.
who they already dictate pricing for, and they say, hey, look, the other 100 firms that we have doing this type of work, it took them only 10 hours to review these contracts, and you're trying to bill us for 50, not going to cut it. So those are the first firms that we saw implementing AI, because the other firms in the industry were doing it. So they had to, in order to remain competitive and keep getting that work from their insurance carrier clients, they had to adopt the AI. Then we saw it after that. The next phase was sort of big law partners who split off and opened their own boutiques. They knew that in order to compete and bring that same level of big law experience down to the average consumer, they realized that they could leverage these efficiencies afforded by AI to still produce higher quality work, give that big law feel, but do so at more affordable rates. And they really had to in order to compete with that structure, big law. So that was sort of the second phase. And now we're seeing, as these firms have started to implement these items, and now you're seeing, defense firms implementing it, it's sort of putting pressure on the marketplace, because consumers are realizing that law firms can and should leverage AI. So now they're expecting, and in some cases demanding, that their lawyers use AI, because they realize these tasks can be automated.
Yeah.
These tasks.
Yeah.
I think another Clio actually did a study where they broke down all the tasks that lawyers typically do, and they found that 74% of all legal tasks could be outsourced to AI, could be
Wow.
completely by AI, which is
What kind?
staggering.
Just curious, like what types of tasks would those be? Just out of curiosity, like what are the buckets?
So they actually created a whole. They referenced I can't remember what the study is, but there's an organization that publishes a study every year
I think it's the
that
paperwork side of it.
categorizes. What was that?
You think it's the paperwork side of it? All the paperwork they have to fill out, or?
Well, certainly the paperwork, but as far as the tasks, this organization, they create essentially task codes. They sort of enumerate all the various tasks lawyers do. And then when they looked at those task codes and then applied AI to those particular items, they found
Got
that
it.
that's where they found the 74% of those
That's
tasks to
a
be
high
automated.
percentage. I mean, that's a real high percentage.
Yeah.
Well, writing briefs alone,
Well, I think
once
about,
once you've
briefs,
got the
pleading,
information.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
contracts.
I think about like what you said at the beginning, because we've seen this. We have a client that is in this space. So I think about this as I understand that the insurance companies are going to come back and say, or any type of industry will eventually come back and say, it shouldn't take you this long. It should have only taken you this because of the aggregated. Who's to say the aggregated data was accurate to begin with?
Yeah.
Do you know what I
Well,
mean?
when you're State Farm,
Yeah,
you have the
but that's the
tremendous
thing.
ability to
Yeah.
push these firms
And
to
I'm
do whatever
wondering
you
if
need
there's
them.
going to be some eventual pushback the opposite way. I would imagine so, because
Yeah.
one complexity of one, and we see this in our profession, what looks straightforward of say getting into your file and getting it kind of working and smooth, and you've experienced this, Jay, what looks daunting when you find out the human capital behind it might be the problem or other elements might be the problem. Telling me that it's going to take X versus, what it is, that's a really tough conversation. That's basically telling somebody how they're going to work. And I think
It is.
when it's hard, right? So when I think of AI in the sense of like, okay, is AI really a good use case for an attorney to have it kind of vet out the type of clientele it wants before it gets to them on a call? Is that a good use case? Or like you're saying, like look at certain tasks, but you still need, I feel like strongly, I still need some oversight to what is happening. I can't
Yeah.
control, I don't
So,
trust what the bot is going to do.
and you shouldn't.
Okay. Yeah.
In the current state of AI, it's so Stanford, they had this highly controversial research paper that they put out in 2024, which they
Oh.
compared some of the top legal technology AI tools,
Uh-huh.
especially many of them who cited that they have near zero, or I forget the exact terminology, but basically no hallucination. And they found that actually hallucination was rampant even in some of the best tools like Thomson Reuters or Lexis AI Plus.
Uh-huh.
Thomson Reuters had, I think it was like a 43% hallucination rate,
Wow.
even though being constrained to primary data sources and being trained on
Yeah.
primary legal documents, rulings, pleadings, opinions, decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So, so the thing is, you have to always, with the current state of AI, I don't know if
Yeah.
we'll ever get there. I would
Yeah.
assume we probably would, but at least right now, you always must check the output, trust but verify.
Uh-huh.
So there's no AI platform. I don't care who they are,
Yeah.
what data
Yeah.
they were trained on, how good their claims seem as far as hallucination. They all hallucinate to some degree, and you have to check the output. Like these tools are made to augment the role of an attorney, not to replace them. Which, from an
Mhm.
attorney perspective, that's great, right? Because
Mhm.
you still are necessary. You're a critical part of the process. I would
Mhm.
say AI is the paint. AI is the paintbrush. The attorney is the painter. So the paintbrush
Oh,
does
I like
nothing
that.
without the attorney. You
Yeah.
still need that person to guide and direct and
Yeah.
to craft and to envision the overall strategy behind it.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
paintbrush doesn't just get up and start, it doesn't create the Monet on its own.
It's just sitting there on the table.
I
At
think of
least,
it
yeah,
as I
at
read
least not yet until the AI gets better. And
Yeah.
I read the book, the Elon Musk autobiography. I forget who it's by, but I read it and they talk about Tesla and how he dictated from being the boss of it that I want a lot of automation in the creation of the car because I want the car to be made really quickly, efficiently, and all that. Then he actually got down on the floor and saw some of the robotic arms doing things that a human could do in 2 minutes, and the robot was taking 5 minutes.
Oh, really?
Wow.
And he looked at it and he said, delete, get rid of it. I want a
Delete.
human doing that because I know delete, because it's going to be faster. The hand could move faster and the person could think where
Yeah.
the robot on some of the tasks, it was slowing the job down and he had to get a certain amount of cars out the door at a certain amount of time. And he eliminated a lot of time in building the car by taking away the robot and putting the person in. but nobody in the line or any of the people running it ever thought that, because they knew he just wanted it automated. So they were going to leave it in place. It was doing the job eventually, but it was slowing the production
Yeah, you
line
needed
down. And he went right
Well,
down, and he's like, take that off, and put a person.
well, part two of the autobiography is that he brings in the Optimus robots and then replaces the
Yeah.
Well, there you have it.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I guess if you're a firm right now who is trying to even begin the process of looking at implementing AI, to your point, in a more really efficient way, not in a way just for the case of having it, because it's not gonna work. You're not implementing it very well then. I guess it's just, do you come up, like, from the beginning, are you coming up with a use case scenario for yourself? Like, okay, if I need these tasks done, what is the best way to make this more efficient? Or are you looking at it? How do you bite the apple, essentially?
Yeah, and it's a big apple, right? So people are worrying,
Yeah.
they're wondering where do they start?
Where do they
So
start?
I'll just quickly, I'll run through the leverage AI framework, because that's the best way that I
Okay.
found to inform law firms how to determine what tasks are suitable. So you start off with the L in leverage, limit identifiable. You have to have some sort of constraint that you're looking to solve for in the business model. So for example, I'll give an example of a client I have, personal injury firm. They do a lot of toxic mold exposure work where they are looking to determine first whether whether that client is going to be a good fit for their firm. Most of that work is personal injury, so it's very similar to personal injury, sort of.
Yeah.
Similar, but it's all contingency. So the firm must have a very strong vetting process. But what they figured is that it was taking them an inordinate amount of time just to get through that vetting process, and they were talking to so many people that never even translated into clients, but there was such specific information that needed to be gathered. Things like, is the client currently still paying rent in that property? If they're not, did they miss a month? Then it invalidates them. Do they still live in the property? If not, invalidates. Do they have pictures of the mold? If not, invalid. So it's like there's all these nuanced things that the firm could identify, but it was taking a human operator so long to do so. So for that firm, we implemented an AI tool to go through that process.
Wow.
And, on the front end, ask targeted questions, and then based on the responses, ask other questions that would then vet that person so the firm knows whether they're even worth talking to for the next steps. Okay, so that's the L, identifier limit.
Okay.
The V is variance allowed in your output. So as we know, large language models and generative AI in general are stochastic, not deterministic, meaning the output can vary slightly based on the way you ask the prompt. If there's any bias in the prompt, you could even ask the same question twice and have a slightly different answer.
Yeah.
So you need to understand for the output that you're ultimately looking to create, is variance allowed? Not then that particular task would not be a good use case for AI. The V, I'm sorry, I already said the V. The R is a repeatable process. Do you have a process that you've already identified that you can then instruct the AI to go through? Do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. If you don't have that, or if it's not possible to do that, then that particular task you identify would not be a good use case for AI. Now, my belief is that most tasks in law firms can be broken down into those steps. Many lawyers, they feel that breaking processes into steps sort of commoditizes their work, but it's the opposite. It allows them to create structure that then allows them to plug in their, the various bright minds in that firm to perform that sophisticated legal analysis. But like, no one wants to do the rote tasks that are associated with getting you up to that point.
Yeah.
So create the steps. G is goal oriented. Is there a point that we know the task is complete? Can we point to something and say, once this is done, the task is complete? If not a good use case for AI. The A, so we did LVRG, leverage. The A stands for associate friendly. So at the current state of AI, it needs to be something that you would entrust a first-year associate to do. We're not talking about, analyzing an entire case or arguments and, coming up with your final, your final brief. We're talking about, these are tasks that you would likely feel comfortable having a first-year associate that you've never worked with before complete for you, so that you can then check the output. And then the I is integratable data. So and integratable is not a word, but I couldn't figure out any other better way. I really need to fit this AI, make a nice acronym.
Ask AI what the word should be.
You know what? And it didn't come out with a great
It didn't
answer.
come out, huh? Okay.
But the integratable data just means like if there's any external data we need to use in order to inform the AI, do you have it all in one place that we can use, that we can easily tap the AI into? So for example, I have a client who's using AI to create discovery resolution letters. So basically, if a firm is if a firm is in litigation, this firm is a family law firm. They will let's say there's a dispute about one of the discoveries, an interrogatory that was requested from the other side, and the other side disputes that having relevance to the case. Well, that firm needs to show that the lawyers took a good faith effort at resolving the issue before getting the court involved.
Yeah.
But that process involves you going through all of your communication, listing out what discovery items were requested, what the status of them were, and then for the disputes, what items are disputed. That means that the firm has to go through all their emails and figure out that information. So what we did is we actually used custom GPT, so using ChatGPT, to that you could tie all the emails into, again, that integratable data source. We had those emails output in one file, and then we were able to share that entire corpus of emails into into ChatGPT, so it could then pull out all the relevant information.
I love it.
That's sort of that's the framework that you should use when you're thinking about AI. You start at the top, first of all, figuring out what constraint actually exists in the business model, what thing is inefficient that is causing the firm to expend an unreasonable amount of time. You start from there, and you work your way through the rest of those acronyms. And as long as it satisfies all those conditions, that task is likely a very good candidate to be outsourced to AI.
I like that example. I really do. Yeah.
You could be speaking on this at ClioCon, perhaps, maybe, I hope. Or you don't know yet.
Good, yeah. They maybe I'm gonna get on that.
Yeah. I would imagine. Well, I was going to say the integratable, you can be part of the cool kids club on the Gen Z who makes up all kinds of words I don't even know. I'm like, what is that? That's now the new word for cool.
Do you guys know mid? Do you guys know that one? Mid?
Which one?
Mid.
Oh.
Mid is the new, it's like it's just like very bad. It's like, oh, that's mid. Like
that's mid, yeah.
You have a bagel and it's like not that great. Oh, this bagel's mid.
Mid, yeah.
Uh-oh.
Okay. Because my husband knows way more than I do. He pays a lot more attention to my son's wording of things, and I'm like, "You ask these questions?" And he's like, "Yeah." And before you know it, I was like, "I have no idea."
I have a feeling that Tiara's in the art space, so I have a feeling she knows that one already.
She knows that one. Yeah. That framework. I mean, I don't know, Linda. I'm sitting there going, okay, how can I just make sure like it just for your own business, for any business model, you have really bite-sized down such a great way to take such a huge thing and understand where does it meticulously go through this series. It's brilliant. Honestly.
Well, it was the result of a lot of failed AI implementations. And I realized if we're going to keep any clients, we need to figure out a way to create a repeatable process. So
that's mid.
We're full transparency.
I got you on that one.
A quick learner.
Well,
I'm going to start walking around and using that word now.
Oh, you don't want to overdo it, Steve.
No, Steve, you don't want to do that. You're going to scare people.
That'll be a dead giveaway that you've just learned it. You have to sort of slowly weave it in.
All right, I'll tone it down.
Way that he just learned it. Oh my God. That's hilarious. I love it. Gosh, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, my head is spinning. This is awesome.
You're welcome. And one other thing that I'll give you is that I just figured out that I was using the wrong microphone this entire time. And I just switched to my really good microphone. So I'm glad the last, minute of the recording could be such high quality audio.
Well, I have to say the sad part was, and this is kind of a funny inside joke with the four of us on this side is, you're new to podcasting. You've made mistakes where you forget to record. Well, that did happen to my husband over the weekend.
Oh,
too.
did it? Oh, wow.
Yeah. I was like, well, been there, done that. This is how you handle this.
Good test run.
Just say
You're like,
sorry.
so,
You might come
so let's
back.
do it again. Just do it exactly the same way you did it, and that'll turn out great.
That's exactly what we tell people. We won't do that anymore, though.
Yeah.
Do you guys know I had a podcast at one point?
No.
Yeah,
You did?
along with everyone else and their mother, back in 2020. Yeah, I had I did 5 episodes, which is I beat the average. The average is you 3 and you usually quit. So I got my 5 in.
Awesome.
And I absolutely had a guest that I had in person live who drove an hour away to get to my office. I forgot to record. And I never I put it off for like 6 months. They're like, hey, I haven't seen the episode. I'm like, yep, working on it.
Oh, they didn't even know. Oh boy.
Hey, look, I got to be honest. Like, yeah, I forgot to record. I felt like such an amateur and a failure. So,
Yeah, it's rough. I mean, we all go there. Like you said, every failed attempt.
And well, we're human,
Yeah, that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, you guys did remember this time, right?
Yeah, it's recording. I checked.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's now a rule. We record before we even
record
start,
the very beginning. Yeah, because it's just not take a chance. Because we get talking, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, let's get started, and you don't hit record.
We screw up. So yeah.
Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow.
A lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
To support the Accountants Law Pod, don't forget to like, share, and leave a review. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you enjoy your favorite podcasts. If you have questions or topic requests, shoot us an email at info@accountantslawpod.com or send us a message through our website, accountantslawpod.com. To join our weekly Accountants Law Lab mastermind sessions, head over to accountantslawlab.com to sign up. And to learn more about Jay and his services, follow the links in the show notes below.
And our show notes should probably include some fun stuff too, like we just talked about, just for fun.
And look for Jay on CleoCon Boston in the fall.
Oh, absolutely. Well, you'll see us. We will be there. Our team will be there. So you'll see
we're bringing the whole team. So you get the full proper trust experience.
Sure. Yeah.
Last year
I'm not signing autographs.
That will definitely be back. Last year was my first CleoCon, and that was a lot of fun.
It's a good, and it's going to be in Boston. I mean, that's going to be so much fun. So
well, it'll be fun too, Jay. Because if you want to crash the proper trust team, you're welcome to.
I will absolutely take you up on that, Steve.
Awesome.
What about you? Are you going to be there? Or?
Yep, I'm going this year.
Yes.
And Jay, what city are you in?
I'm in Chicago here.
You're in Chicago. Okay.
Oh, that's an easy flight to Logan.
Done it many times. So my director of client service, which he'll be there as well. He lived in Boston for many years, so we would go there. There's a phenomenally overrated restaurant called Legal Seafoods that we would go every time we visited. It is good food, but it's just not. It's overrated.
It's overrated. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. It's like every time we go, we would say we're going to find a local place that's where the real legal seafood.
You got to go to the North End and go for Italian.
Yeah. Oh yes, we did do that actually. North End, yeah. The Italian. We found this nice little is like a speakeasy.
There's a speakeasy. Yeah.
You go in the basement. There's people smoking cigars right in your face. Yeah. I'm not a smoker, but it was great to have the authentic experience. I'm like, come on, just.
Bring it on.
Like I'm in 1913. It's
exactly.
Well, till next time, friends. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.